Today's saint is John Coltrane. I don't know if any of you are into jazz, but I am. And when I was studying jazz in college, John Coltrane was the best improvist that we could study in comparison to Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and others. But he was up there. And throughout college, I looked up to him as a jazz musician, as a saxophone player. I'm a trumpet player, but I still learn from him. And he to me was just a great musician and activist. But it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I realized that there was actually an entire church built around him. And there's actually a book written about him that you can read that is super interesting. It's called the Coltrane Church, and it's written by the Dr. Nicholas Louis Baham III, and it's a great read. It's such an interesting story. And just some background on John Coltrane. He was an American, as I said, an American jazz saxophonist and band leader. He was born in Hamlet, North Carolina on September 23rd, 1926. And he died at the age of 41, unfortunately, due to his younger years heroin use, and his liver just failed him due to the drug use in his youth. John was a revolutionary when it came to jazz improv, as I said before, and is considered one of the greatest jazz improvists of all time. He was married to two women, Junita, until they divorced in 1966, and he remarried that same year to Alice. And Alice, in her own right, was a great musician on the harp, and she also sang. So she was no slouch when it came to the music world either. John Coltrane Church was founded by Archbishop King and his wife, Reverend Marina. They first witnessed John Coltrane on a wedding anniversary of theirs, so they weren't into the whole John Coltrane train yet until they heard him at this jazz club, which had a bunch of other musicians, but John stood out, and they actually had a spiritual awakening, or they would call it a baptism. They had a musical baptism during that time, and they were awoken to the Holy Spirit based off of John's playing. And to them, John was different. He played spirit-filled music, and they just sensed the Holy Spirit. So it began their desire to then form an entire church around St. John Coltrane. They got into some muddy waters by considering him to be God. He was like a Jesus figure for them there for quite a while. So that part of the story, I don't know if I'm on board with, but as you'll hear, they did end up joining the African Orthodox Church, of which they were like, no, you can't call him God, but we can make him a saint. And at this point, their theology is that he is the saint, but not actually God incarnate. So the theology is much more in line with the rest of Christian thought on a global scale. So that's good. But going back to the African Orthodox Church, in 1981, His Eminence Archbishop Hinkson of the African Orthodox Church sent his emissary Bishop Ajari to invite the Coltrane Church into this larger global church of the African Orthodox Church. And the Coltrane Church's actual name was One Mind Temple. They agreed to join, and to show their gratitude for joining the African Orthodox Church, they did indeed name John Coltrane as a saint. So that solidifies him in the books for all of eternity as one of these spiritual leaders that are worth listening to, and in his case, actually listening to with his music. To me, this is just a story about how powerful music is and what an important tool it is to worship. One Sunday, the first Sunday of every month, All they do at this One Mind Temple, the John Coltrane Church, is listen to John Coltrane. And they allow the Spirit to come out of that listening of his music. And mostly just from his one album, A Supreme Love. That's the album that they typically use. It's not really my favorite album of his. I like Blue Train, to be honest, but that is the one that they use most commonly. And it is the one that John Coltrane created with the intentions of it being a spiritual experience. He even has in the album, if you actually have the album, that's awesome, it has a prayer written by John Coltrane in it. So it was intended to be a spiritual experience. And it's a testimony to the Holy Spirit not having to be spoken in word, but can be spoken in sound, in feeling, in emotion. I think we can get into trouble by only allowing the Spirit to move us through emotion or sound or other means, removing the intellect. But I also think it's troubling to only allow the Spirit to move through intellect or spoken word, because there is just so much out there that God can use to inspire us and to help us feel closer to Him. And that's what the John Coltrane Church is all about. It's all about getting people closer to God through music. And Lutherans, we are big in music. But a lot of us in the Lutheran spheres are very much kind of European music, organist music, classical music. And we're moving into maybe some more pop music, Christian pop music. But this is a testament to say that it doesn't have to be Christian music for God to work through it. Jazz, even though it has some gospel undertones, was never intended to be purely a spiritual experience. But it is, and any type of music can be. And it shows that you don't have to meet God in church, that God is truly everywhere. And what a glorious thing that is. God isn't the building, God is the people. And that's such an important thing for us to remember. If you want to learn more, there are 2 videos that I will link to this. One's by NPR and one is by the Coltrane Church themselves. And I'll also link to this book, which is a very, very interesting read. I do want to preface that I don't believe everything that they say theologically, but I do find it extremely fascinating and inspiring. And maybe we can use parts of it here at Grace. Take what we can and let them continue to do what they're doing over there. But it's truly a remarkable story. And the story of John Coltrane is just awesome. And I really encourage you to just listen and see the story of this church and the amazing strides that they made throughout the years and the great work that they're doing. And maybe we can allow St. John Coltrane as one of our saints, because I think he's definitely worthy of it. All right, I hope you learned a little bit, and I hope that you watch those videos, read his book, and read more about the John Coltrane Church. All right, have a great one. God bless. Bye.